thanks for the introduction. I hope everyone has enjoyed the session so far. I think there's been really insightful sessions. And what we hope, me and Amy, I know we're apart on the other side of the panel, but we'll join together and see how everything comes together. But we do hope that you do take something out of our presentation as well. And this is more of a journey. So I would say it's insights, but it's also a journey that we're going through, which we think is very important. And that journey is first-party ID. And I guess as to why we're here, so why me and Amy are in front of you today and talking at MeasureUp. We're not a research company. We're typically an advertising and a platform company. And the main reason we're here is digital advertising is facing one of its biggest challenges. And I know there's been some big headlines. I thought we would put a headline just for the sake of it as well. But no, it's if we think about what's happening, there's a lot of things happening. But the key focus for our presentation here today is not retail media, which is a great opportunity, and I know we're going to hear about that later in the sessions. Not CTV or digital out of home, again, a really good opportunity, but more around third-party cookie deprecation in Chrome. So that time is ticking along. I thought I also put in this is actually a graph from IAB, which shows the spend, and I know it was shared a bit earlier as well. And it's really important one to look at right now, because if you look at the amount of revenue that is tied to third-party cookie, whether that's measurement or whether that's addressable audiences, it's actually quite large. And we don't have much time to actually address this problem. Before we start, I'll go through who we are. And what we do. If you haven't heard of Audience360, very quick plug, I guess. My GM will be happy about this. We're Audience we're Australia's leading first-party data provider. We have a unique model where we help businesses monetize their first-party data. That's what we do. And also, we're a trusted partner in a sense that we're very transparent in terms of where the data is coming from, how it's gathered. So that's who Audience360 is. I will pass it to lovely Amy now.
Thank you. So I'm from Adform, and Adform's a global ad tech company. We're European, so we really have our roots in first-party ID and privacy compliance. We specialise in first-party ID solutions for our clients, and we're really good at solving for environments that don't support third-party cookies. We're full stack. Within our stack, we're omni-channel, independent, interoperable, and what I like to say is fiercely transparent, meaning actually properly transparent. And we're really focused on privacy, flexibility to make sure our clients get what they need from our technology, and industry collaboration. So I'm just going to give a really quick recap, and it's not anything that you guys haven't seen before, but just to paint the picture of why we are in the state of addressability or lack thereof that we're in today. So the journey began in 2018 when Apple decided to remove third-party cookie support from the Safari browser. Excuse me. And then in 2019, Firefox followed suit. These two initial changes rendered 38% of Australia's browser population unaddressable. That's nearly half, and that was 5 years ago. In 2019, so later the same year that Firefox made their change, Google announced that they would deprecate third-party cookies in Chrome by 2022. And all of a sudden, everyone sat up and paid attention because this was going to be the final nail in the third-party cookie coffin. In 2021, Apple took further steps to limit ad tracking with the introduction of ATT in apps in iOS. And this had a significant impact on the addressability of app supply globally, but very much so in Australia as well. Then in 2021, Google delayed cookie deprecation in Chrome, and everyone kind of went, a little bit. But now here we are. We're looking down the barrel of Q4 2023, and this problem is real, and we need to deal with it now. All signs are pointing to Google actually, finally, following through. So today, half of browser-based audiences in Australia are unreachable with a third-party cookie. Over the last 5 years, Safari market share in the browser market has grown, and that's driven by lots of different factors, but primarily Apple's dominance in the mobile device space, coupled with the migration of audiences from desktop to mobile. So the unaddressable portion of the market has grown. Now less than half of the browser-based audiences are active in Chrome, and even some of Chrome doesn't support third-party cookies. What this means is that we have an oversaturation of targeted advertising content in the Chrome environment, arguably an oversaturation of advertising in general. Anything that's targeting a cookie-based audience is experiencing delivery issues, and then that's kind of compounded by some buyers actively excluding Safari from campaigns, even when they're not targeting a third-party cookie audience, because they can't attribute any performance. We have compromised data quality because there's this new dependency on lookalikes to make sure that things can deliver. And then there's measurement gaps just generally from conversion attribution through to frequency measurement, all sorts of problems.
Great. So this goes into why addressability is so important to us as a business. As I mentioned, Audience360 is a data business. And really what it represents for us is the core of what we do. We've got approximately on a monthly basis, we can see around 80 million unique users. We represent first-party data of some of the leading brands such as car sales, AFL, Webjet, Mozo, Real Estate View, Rent, and we have a number of data points that we want to keep. And this is really at threat with the changes that are coming. So this is really where our journey starts. And I think really important to mention that this is a journey, so I'm not going to preach to you that we've solved a problem. This is a journey, and what we want to share with you is some of the learnings we've got from that journey. So like most journeys, started with fear. I think it's a quite accurate representation. So when the announcement came through, we were quite scared. I was looking for a new job. That's true. I could be in 6 months' time anyway, just out there, since I'm on the podium. But then there was joy as well. I think after the dust settled, and I think the other thing we have to remember that we were during a COVID period, which was quite siloed, and it was quite crazy time. But we had the announcement from Google around extension of third-party cookies, and this was quite joyful for us, not because it got extended and we thought they're never going to get rid of it. It was more so that, actually, you know what, now we have to get serious and really channel our inner Rocky to figure out what we can do outside and not just wait for things to happen. And we did have options, and this was both a good thing and a bad thing. And I think some of these options we have discussed in this forum previously. For example, universal ID. It's an anonymous identifier that publishers can have across, whether it's deterministic or probabilistic, which can address some of the cross-domain targeting use cases we have. Data clean rooms. I know we've heard a lot about data clean rooms as well, which is allowing one, two, or multiple parties to share their data in an anonymous environment or in a safe and privacy-compliant environment for them to then address that audience. Google Cohort. Whilst we were going through this assessment, we heard a lot about topics and Fledge and audience-protected, protected audience APIs. However, now that's just been made available for testing in the last month or so. And then the other thing that we were hearing a lot is in order for us to address this, we need to go back to contextual advertising. And for us, that wasn't necessarily an option because we were an audience business. So this really led to looking at what was the best fit for us. There was a lot of rigor we went through to identify what we needed and what solution would best fit. And this is best fit from a testing point of view. What should we test? And it came down to a couple of criteria as to why we selected Universal ID. The first one was or why we wanted to test Universal ID first. And one of the first things we looked at was ownership and control. We wanted a solution that gave us ownership of our first-party data or our data partners' first-party data and control around how we segmented that audience. That then led to having a solution that's privacy-focused. And I know this is a very controversial one because we don't know what privacy will look like in maybe 6 months' time. But within the framework of what we knew, we wanted to have a solution that had a level of encryption around IDs, and we wanted to have a solution that could manage users' consent. And then market differentiation and market proposition. As a business, we wanted to ensure that we had our proposition around audiences still available. And the final one, probably the most important one, is around measurement. So addressability is great, but without measurement, we can't really address that. So those were some of the key criteria that we use in terms of identifying, we needed to test universal ID.
So Audience360 had two big decisions to make. The first one was the platform that they'd use to collect and store data without third-party cookie technology. And then secondly, the identifier that they would onboard to be able to address those users across other domains. So from a platform perspective, they really needed something that could support multiple IDs. Someone, I can't remember who it was, but someone mentioned in an earlier presentation about, we can't agree on a measurement thing, no one's ever going to agree on an ID, and we certainly believe that that's the case. There's going to be, the identity landscape will change. So they needed a platform that was ID agnostic, so working with technology that didn't have a preference for a certain ID, because Audience360's needs needed to be at the core and not muddied by a platform's preference for a particular type of ID. And finally, the ability to support both deterministic and probabilistic ID types. So uses authenticated data that's associated with an email address, and then also users that are active across websites that may not necessarily be logged in. From an identifier perspective, Audience360 needed scale, because if they can't deliver impressions against a first-party audience, then what's the point of having the IDs? Scale is hugely dependent on publisher adoption, so it was really important to choose an ID solution that was broadly adopted across the Australian supply market. And finally, immediacy. So cookies are going away, and Audience360's business is dependent on being able to address all of the data that they have across the open internet. So if they couldn't validate that that actually worked before cookies went away, then they were going to potentially be in a bit of trouble. Underpinning all of these needs is just a core dependency on privacy compliance and data security and ownership from a hygiene perspective across everything. And so I'm pleased to report that Adform was chosen as the platform of choice. And for the Audience360 use case, that's a combination of the Adform data management platform alongside the Adform DSP. And from an identifier perspective, Audience360 went with ID5.
Thank you. And I guess the question of why this is a perfect partnership. So if you look at ID5, it's one of the universal identifiers, and it's not the only one. There's many out there. But when we looked at its penetration in the local market, it had the strongest publisher adoption in Australia. Now, what that means is that it allows us to reach those audiences across multiple publishers in an RTB environment. It also solved for unauthenticated audiences as well with this probabilistic modeling. And immediate activation via Adform. So we really couldn't wait till end of 2023 to do something, or in 2024 to test something. We wanted to test something right now, activate something right now that would deliver us some results.
And so what that looked like in practice for us when we onboarded is that we ingest the ID5 IDs into the Adform platform alongside all of the audience attributes across the Audience360 partner set. Having the attribute level data stored alongside the ID in our system means that Audience360 can do really sophisticated audience segmentation in the platform. And then finally, our data management platform and our DSP has a single code base. And so when it comes to actually using the data, Audience360 can collect, segment, activate, all in real time. And then there's no audience loss when they're moving audience segments from the data management platform into the DSP. And this is the beauty of a cookieless environment. When there's no cookies, there's no sync. And so if you're working with first-party IDs and you're working with the right technology, there shouldn't be any audience loss.
Cool. In terms of incremental, when we implemented this with Adform and ID5, we started to see incremental increases across our audiences straight away. And what that looked like is we were now able to see 28% more audiences across all our devices. On desktop, this was 18% more audiences compared to third-party cookies. And then on mobile, which was very interesting, and the numbers still sort of blow my mind a little bit, but is really important, is we were seeing up to 40% more audiences using first-party ID versus third-party ID. Obviously, a lot of that is due to Safari's penetration in that market, but this just gave you an indication of the incremental reach we were getting just by implementing first-party IDs.
Thank you. So we onboarded, we built the audience taxonomy, and then we just went live because Audience360 didn't really have anything to lose while third-party cookies were still there. And the purpose of this, sharing these insights with you, is so that, because we wanted to be, the title of the presentation was an open book, that we did this because we knew that Audience360 needed to do something, and then we went live. And we didn't really curate a particular test. We didn't kind of decide how things should look like. We didn't have we weren't thinking about presenting at MeasureUp when we set things live. So, so what I'm going to talk you through is just a look back, right? We went live, and this is what it looked like. So hybrid audiences went live across all of Audience360's campaigns in Adform. And in this context, when we talk about hybrid audiences, we're talking about hybrid ID types. So all IDs were included in aggregate in the audience segments that were targeted. So this was third-party cookies, device IDs, and the ID5 IDs. From the time that we went live to the time that we extracted the data to get this presentation together, there were 51 campaigns in the data set. So, I mean, I'm not a statistician, but I would say a statistically relevant sample size. And those campaigns ran across both video and display inventory, only across the open internet. So we basically took all of the data from all of these campaigns and ran a performance analysis to see, well, like, what happened and what did we see? And it's shown really positive results. So we ran analysis on first-party ID versus third-party ID. And to be really clear, that is, we looked at the impressions and clicks that were transacted on first-party IDs versus the impressions and clicks that were transacted on third-party IDs. First-party IDs delivered a 52% better click-through rate and enabled an additional 21% of impression delivery. So 21% of the total impressions that were delivered were transacted on a first-party ID, and had Audience360 not onboarded with ID5, those impressions would have been unavailable to them. So what that tells us is that there's incremental scale to be achieved today, and it performs better. So double whammy. Then we looked at Safari versus Chrome, and we were able to extract some more kind of gritty insights from the data when we isolated the browser delivery. So we saw that in Safari, viewability scores were 7% higher in aggregate. I mean, I don't know why. You could reference back to our comments earlier about cluttered environments in Chrome and perhaps a less engaged audience for advertising content in that environment. Also in Safari, CPMs were 4.8% higher. And we didn't expect this. This was a bit of a curveball for us. We kind of thought it would be cheaper because there's less people targeting those environments for all of the reasons we've already talked about. But I think the key thing to remember with the CPM is that Audience360 are only targeting first-party audiences, so perhaps there's more competition against that addressable supply. But it's also a really positive story for any publishers in the room that if you adopt first-party ID across your supply, you can drive better yield in Safari. And I know from my time working on supply side that that's really challenging. We all saw the CPMs drop off a cliff back in 2018 when Safari switched off cookies. Despite the higher eCPM, Safari performed so much better that CPCs were 27.5% lower in Safari than they were in Chrome. And then we did some proper testing. Shrenik's going to talk to you about that.
Yeah, this is coming back from wild into city. I think that's the analogy we used. So we decided to apply a bit of rigor to this as well, because the insights were compelling enough for us to say we need to investigate this a little bit more. And we constructed a experiment, and the experiment in this case where we had two lines. We had a control line which was running across Chrome browsers using third-party cookies, and we had a test line which was running across Safari and Firefox predominantly, which used our first-party IDs. All the other parameters around the creative, around the audience targeting, around in optimizations, around bid strategies, all those were consistent across those two lines. And the objective again for us was, and the objectives are in mind mind of delivering for our advertisers. So what would this deliver for our advertisers? And the objectives were around validating incremental audience reach by adopting this, validating performance uplift, and also validating supply, which was also it was very important as well. So can we validate that we get quality supply in a cookieless environment using first-party ID? And there is actually a lot of data in there, and I know we do have limited time. So I think putting this slide together, I said, this is such a it's such a simple slide, but I hope that that the numbers sort of speak to themselves, because I think I could have probably put 10 slides together, but we'll keep it to one. In terms of, I guess, what we saw from the campaign ran over 3 months. There was, it was over 1 million impressions that we ran across this. And what we were able to validate was that we were seeing 18% incremental audience reach by across the cookieless line. We also saw increases in CTR, so it's validated what we were seeing in the wild. And we also saw for cookieless browsers improvement in viewability. What I don't have here is the supply as well. So to our surprise, most of the major publishers locally were supplying 5 IDs via their pre-bid module. So that was really good as well, because that also illustrated to us that there is adoption and there is that knowledge across the publisher space where they are providing those IDs. So what did we learn? As I mentioned earlier, this is a journey, so I'm not here to preach universal IDs or first-party IDs. What I really want to take you through is the journey that we're on right now, and it's not finished yet. And what did we learn from it? And this is, I guess, looking at the sessions earlier, there's a number of ways we can actually, I can reword this, which is more around testing and learning. Having the right partner to test. And I think in Adform, we got very lucky in a partner who was willing to help us, but more importantly, someone who gave us right access to their product team as well to deliver on some of the requirements we had. Developing a test and learn muscle. And I think this is really important because it's when we first started this journey, testing and learning was actually a scary thing for the business to do. It was a risk. It was a gamble. So therefore, testing and developing that muscle is really important. And then also, I think one of the things we learned from this is that browser-led solution perpetuates fragmentation. And effectively, I think what we found out with this is that although Safari has been non-addressable for a period of time, it still has a significant amount of audiences. You just look at mobile, there's 40% of its audiences there. So by having a browser-led solution that only works on one browser doesn't really solve for the problem we have. I don't have the answer, but I think it's a very important learning that we get out of this as well. And yeah, I'll pass it on to Amy now.
So I think whether this is a learning or a validation of our hypothesis, but that there's opportunities to improve audience addressability now, and there are opportunities. Safari is this glorious testing ground to test alternative solutions to third-party cookies while they're still alive in Chrome. So there's this great opportunity to do that today, and we're really glad that we're doing that and continuing to do that. It's also not easy. It's one thing to stand up on the stage and be like, look at all this shiny stuff we did. There was just an enormous amount of hard work that went into this project. The relationship between Adform and Audience360 predates my time at Adform, and I've been with Adform for 18 months. So it's been a big project and a long time coming. It's really important that you have a really deep understanding of your use case and that you do a really rigorous review of the market and look at all of the options that are available to you, because not everyone is going to need the same solution. And finally, to Shrenik's point about browser-led solutions perpetuating fragmentation, is that we've really learned that if you use technology and solutions that are available to everyone in the market based on what their needs are, that's the thing that will enable sustained success, because you're not going to be at the mercy of one player in the market to change the way that you can address your own audiences.
Great. So I guess what's next for both for us and Adform and our partnership? We believe that change is constant. We know there's so many challenges and headwinds coming our way. So this is, I said, a starting of our journey, but it's definitely not the end. In terms of the areas that we are now focusing on is measurement and attribution in that cookieless environment, seeing if we can do something there. And hopefully next year we can come back with a case study that's similar, but focusing on measurement and attribution. Adform My Diffusion. This is a great technology, and I'll probably give Adform a plug here. They paid me for it. But one of the challenges we had when we looked at universal ID was the number of universal IDs there is. So Adform is coming up with a solution, iDiffusion, which is looking at bringing that together and giving you more of a reach and a single view of that, which is, I think it's a really good product that we are very excited to test. And finally, the Google Privacy Sandbox. As I mentioned earlier, this is not one solution. We're going to test multiple solutions around addressing third-party cookies. And this is something that's been made available last month, and we're actively now looking at the APIs to see how that can address some of the third-party cookie use cases that we have.
So I think our partnership is really founded in testing, and so we have a very open, collaborative approach to the things that we will try in our platform, and we're really excited about the additional tests that we'll be able to do with Audience360 over the months and years to come. We're also just acutely aware that there are going to be more challenges, so we have a really active, blinkers off approach to the way that the market is going to look in 3 to 6 months, in 5 years. And we already know what one of those biggest challenges is going to be, and that's the new Privacy Act that's coming into Australia. And I think both of our businesses have had privacy at the core of our decision making for a long time, and so we're really braced for that change.
Great. Just to finish off, I think for us, the key learning out of all this is collaboration is the key. I think finding the right partner to collaborate and test right now as opposed to wait. I think that's really important. I can tell you this much, but via this collaboration, I can sleep a lot easier. So if you're having sleepless night around third-party cookie, I would say find a partner, collaborate. We're here as well if you want to test any of those things. But yeah, that's our journey.
Are we doing questions?
Do we have time? Oh, one. Well, there is one unless there's anyone that has a question from the floor. I'm trying to speak to real people before I look at Slido. Well, the question in Slido was, I suppose, a bit more for you, Amy. What's that killer line for agencies when they're talking to their clients about the opportunities they could be missing out on? Is it in relation to those unseen audiences, or is it higher performance improvement? What's the one bit that agencies can help speak to their clients about in this entire space around these capabilities?
Oh gosh, I mean, it's all of the above, and it really depends on what your clients are doing. I mean, not everyone has first-party data. There's lots of clients running contextual campaigns, and so if you're running contextual campaigns, the answer is that if you're running in Safari, you're just ruining those consumers with unmanaged frequency, and there's technology available that can solve for that. If you are targeting first-party audiences and they're all cookie-based, you're ignoring half of the internet, so there's incremental reach and more cost efficiency and money to be made. So I think I would say step back and have an agency position on how you want to handle cookieless environments, but don't say the same thing to every client, because every client needs something different, because every client has different assets. And so I think that you really need to actually understand what's going on. And the only way that you're going to understand is ask all the questions that you've not been asking. Ask the silly questions and talk to partners and talk to us, and we will support you to help understand what's actually going on, so that you can then have a confident conversation with your client. And the other thing I would say is that we talk to some clients about our solution for addressing cookieless environments, and sometimes, in a scary amount of times, people say to us, oh, okay, but I don't know how to tell my clients that we've been ignoring half of the internet since 2018. They might get a little bit upset. And so that can be a challenging conversation. And I mean, I don't know, I like to say honesty prevails. But that, there's a story to be told, and I think if you have been doing that in your agency, you're not alone. We have that conversation so often. So I think, yeah, just understand top to bottom. Make sure your CEO understands that it's a challenge, and make sure that your coordinators understand how to have a conversation at their level to make sure that, you know, it's a whole agency approach to that, solving that problem.
Yep, and that's a consultative response that you're looking for. Great presentation. Well done, everyone.
Thank you.